when a car manufacturer says this is its flagship, it should be a showcase. It should be a line in the sand moment where they are saying this is the best at what we are capable of doing from a design, engineering and manufacturing point of view. Now, BMW's electric car range has been, well, a little bit higgledy-piggledy to say the least. I mean, despite a brilliant start with the i3 way back in 2013, after that, well, nothing really happened up until last year. And then we saw things like the iX3 and the i4, which are pretty much just electrified versions of the X3 and the 4 Series Grand Coupe. But they also launched this, the iX, which they say is their flagship. This is their showcase. In other words, the best at what they're capable of doing. Hence, there is no number in its name. It is just I for electrified and X for SUV. But is it the best that they can do? Or is it just another thing to tide us over until the real talent arrives? Time to find out. Welcome to the BMW iX xDrive 40 MSport. Welcome to a glorious Easter bank holiday weekend. And as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we go into this week's road test review of the new BMW iX xDrive 40 MSport, it is of course that time where I ask you if you'd ever be so kind to make sure that you like, comment and subscribe to the AutoEV channel. Make sure you press the little bell button that's down there as well, because that way you'll receive notification of when our next video goes live. If you've been a supporter of us this far, thank you ever so much for that support. And if you're new to the channel, you haven't seen what we're capable of, maybe stick around and take a look through the back catalogue and become one. Now, if you are a regular viewer, you'll think to yourself, well, hang on a second, you've already had the iX on the channel, why are you driving it again? And that's true, we did. We went to the BMW launch of the iX last year and we had a drive in the car. But that was the xDrive 50, the more powerful, bigger battery car. This one is the one that BMW say is going to be the big seller in the range, the xDrive 40. It is a smaller battery, which we'll obviously come on to later, and it is less powerful, which again, we'll talk about in a little minute. But I wanted to know if you actually lose anything by going for that smaller battery, that smaller motor car. Because if you remember, if you've watched the i4 videos that we've done, the i4 reviews that we've done, we said that actually the M50 wasn't the pick of the range, it was actually the cheaper eDrive 40 that we thought was the best of the i4 range. So, going on that theory, is this the pick of the iX range? Well, let's stick it through a proper big road test and find out. Now, as always, we start with styling, and let's be honest, it's going to be the most controversial point of, well, pretty much any new BMW at the moment. I don't know what's going on with BMW. They're not really bringing out, great looking cars, if I'm honest with you. However, confession time. This is kind of starting to grow on me, but let me justify that for a second. I still don't think it's a good looking car, but I think in the darker colour of this one, whereas the previous test car we had was a kind of red that was the colour of a vet's forearm, I think this works better. It kind of tones it all down a bit and doesn't make it look quite so, well, hideous. It also does away on this car without that kind of bronze trim around the windows and the mirrors that the last test car had. So again, keeping it toned down in a darker colour tends to make it work a bit better. But as I say, it's still not a looker. You've got the, well, it's not really a grille anymore, is it? Because it doesn't do any cooling or anything. It's just kind of BMW's double kidney signature. And it's got all its technology in here. So the LiDAR is in here, and the little camera for the front facing bits here as well. A tiny little camera there. And BMW say this is made of self-healing material. So if this gets scratched, it heals itself. There you go. We'll get on to practicality in a bit, but this big bonnet doesn't open unless you're at the BMW dealership. I'm not sure what's underneath here. There's no front luggage space, whatever you like. So I don't know what's underneath there. What are they hiding? Lord Lucan? Shower guard? I don't know. But if you want to fill up your windscreen washer fluid, that's where you do it. The BMW badge pops up and you do it from in there. So that's quite a nice little trick. And I do quite like these kind of haunches with the kind of badge inset in there. You've got these nice kind of laser lights, which are really, really slim. They're the slimmest headlights that have been on a BMW, and they do work really, really well. And there's a lot of active cooling down at the bottom. So as I say, yeah, it's still not a looker, but it is a bit of a grower. Or is that just me? And as I say, around the side, without having that kind of, I think they call it Titan bronze trim round it, and having it done in a kind of gloss black, I think makes it look a lot better. Big 22-inch alloys on this MSport model, which kind of, they don't look particularly big, you know, 22-inch alloys. And it is quite a big bulbous car. I mean, it's 5 metres long. Oddly enough, the people that I talk to about this car, it tends to be the non-car people who don't mind the way it looks. My wife, for instance, turned around to me and said, it's a bit square, but I quite like it. But then she said the same about me 11 years ago, and so, well, maybe her judgment isn't to be trusted then. Anyway, one thing I do like, which is, well, unique in its class, apart from the Tesla, frameless doors. Fantastic. But the other thing as well is when you do open the door, is when you see the wonderful construction down in here with this kind of carbon fibre structure that's round the car. It's very similar to what they did with i3, and I absolutely love that. I love seeing the different materials exposed on the car, and when you can actually see that a lot of effort has gone into it. Good sized mirrors, you get the little cameras in them, embedded into them as well, which helps with the safety systems, the parking, and the navigation system. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I think in a dark colour it just kind of works for me. I'm not so sure about the kind of round wheel arch there and then the square bit above it. It's maybe not everyone's cup of tea, but I do like this kind of window line here, which is, as I say, a nod to the Hofmeister kink that you used to get on the 3 Series. And then of course you've got your iX badge up in there. But in fairness, I think the best angle of it is at the back. So yeah, round the back you've got these nice indented slim tail lights, which I quite like, I have to say, that kind of mirror the sort of like slim headlights at the front. The only downside is, say, they're indented and there's just going to get dirt trapped in there, and that's going to really annoy my OCD, I think. Anyway, maybe not everyone's the same as me. Big aero roof spoiler up here, which helps with the aerodynamics of the car. It's one of the most aerodynamically efficient cars in its class, which is needed because of the size and weight of the car. Talk about that in a little bit. Your big iX badge there, number plate inset there, and of course your BMW badge with the blue roundel, because obviously it's electric, and you get tiny little cameras. These cameras are excellent, and they really are excellent. The clarity of the image they give is superb, but they are tiny, it's just embedded in there. But I do like these lights, I have to say. I mean, when you first kind of unlock the car, the way that they come on, and look at that. Ooh, sexy. Yeah. Look, as I say, it's still not a great looking car, but spec right, it's not quite as bad maybe as we first thought. But as I say, what do you think? Let us know in the comments. Now, an apology from me, because on our first road test of the iX, I turned around and said, "Oh, that's quite a big boot, that's all right." Actually, it's not big at all when you think about it, because this is a 5 metre long car. That's 500 litres in there as it stands. You can extend it up to 1,750 litres, and you just press a little button here and it flips the rear seats down. And it's quite nice because you've got a relatively flat load through. But 500 litres isn't massive because it's down on its main rivals, such as the Audi e-tron, the Mercedes-Benz EQC, and also Jaguar's smaller I-Pace. Not only that, it's also smaller by 10 litres than its baby brother, the iX3. That being said, we can still get suitcases in, which I'll show you in a second. But before then, you've got some underfloor storage here for the cable bags, which is good. This particular car is also optioned with an electrically fold-out tow bar, and the car will tow an unbraked trailer up to 750 kilos. I still say, when I said in the first initial road test, this seems quite big and bulbous right above your head, and I'm not particularly tall, and it just feels like it's really closed in on me when I'm here. You've got this weird kind of split parcel shelf, this rigid parcel shelf, which is good from a security point of view, but maybe just a roller blind is a little bit more practical, because when you take that out, well, where are you going to put it? But as I say, the suitcases will fit in. So there's a large suitcase going in there. There's a medium one, and then we've got 2 carry-ons at the side there. And you do have a little bit more extra space around here, and as I say, remember, there's some underfloor storage for like rucksacks or handbags or whatever. But the big thing for me is the fact, as much as BMW say this is a bespoke platform, and it's not strictly true because it does share some elements of internal combustion car componentry in it, there isn't any front storage up the front there, and that's a bit disappointing. But there we go, it's not bad. But it's not all bad news at all, because this is where it all starts to get a bit better for the BMW iX, and that is in the rear, because it is vast back here. As I say, the car's 5 metres long. It has a huge wheelbase. It's almost the same wheelbase as our Range Rover, and you do get a huge amount of lounging space back here. There's a flat floor right across, so even the person that sits in the middle of the bench is well catered for. There's USB-C charging ports on the backs of the front seats. There's a rigid kind of little storage pocket there. There's door bins which are shaped to take water bottles. This car's fitted with the lounge package, which gives it the big panoramic glass roof, which is lovely because even in this darker colour it lets a lot of light into the car. But it's these rear seats, and I said it on the first road test, these are probably some of the best rear seats this side of a Rolls-Royce Bentley that I've ever sat in, because they are shaped round at the side here, so your shoulders have got nice support, and you can actually lounge in them back here. You don't have to sit bolt upright. There's a really nice kind of feel to them, and I really like this material that this car's been equipped with. It's a sort of Alcantara cloth blend. In fact, my 8-year-old daughter commented the other day how nice the interior looked. She said she loved the material. What else is there? Well, the ISOFIX points are nice and easy to get to, as and most BMWs, with little clip-up covers. That's handy, especially when you've got kids like me and you've got to put seats in and out of cars. There's a drop-down armrest in the centre here with a cup holders that slide out at the end, which is better than having them in the middle. There's no storage in that, but that's okay. I don't mind that so much. You can also adjust the middle headrest as well for height, although the back ones on these two are fixed. But yeah, and this car's got equipped with the rear climate control system as well. So in terms of rear space, it's sensational, I have to say, and in terms of its comfort, it is fantastic, and I would say it's better than the e-tron and the EQC in that respect. So that's a win here for the iX. Now, if you've watched our triple test with the BMW i4, Tesla Model 3 and Polestar 2, where my colleagues Charlie and Rod joined me, you will have seen in that we were a little bit critical in some respects of the i4's cabin. And there's especially Charlie, and there was a reason for that. It felt a little bit safe. Charlie felt it was kind of over-designed almost, because what you had was the normal kind of 4 Series interior with the console and stuff, but then with this big screen attached to the dash, and you just kind of felt the mixture of it all just didn't work. And that was BMW, a bit like the styling on the outside, playing it safe. They were trying to move things forward incrementally, where the people that were coming from normal combustion engine cars maybe were a bit frightened by something that was too avant-garde and too techy, so they kind of dialed back the style of that. Here we see a return to form, and as I say, Rod and I both agreed this is like the sort of like the original i3 cockpit, where you had the 2 screens, but now obviously it's just this one big curved screen which is attached by these kind of pylons that just make it protrude out from the dashboard. And I think this is, without doubt, the best interior in its class. I love this interior. I think BMW have gone an absolute blinder with this, and for many reasons. First things first, the way it looks. I love the design. I love the fact you've got the material up on the dashboard here. As I say, this just sits on these kind of pylons that kind of bring it out towards you. It's curved towards the driver, which makes me always think of the old kind of BMWs from the 70s and 80s that were very driver-centric dashboards. I really like that. You get such a good view forward, like Charlie mentioned in the Tesla, where you can see the base of the windscreen because of the way that it's been set. So the visibility is excellent out of the car. So that's the first thing, the way it looks. You also, like the i3, get a great feeling of space up here because there's no console in here. There's a flat floor in front, and what you have here is this kind of floating console with some of the gear shift controls and minor controls, which I'll come on to in a second. The dashboard itself, the infotainment system, is just brilliant to use, because not only can you use it as a touch sensitive screen, obviously depending on what you want, you can also use voice control, and it does actually work quite well, even with somebody with a gargled accent like me. It can understand me. And you can also use the iDrive controller as well, BMW's 8th generation iDrive controller, which is just just simplicity to use in itself, and I absolutely love it. Now, at first glance, when you first go into the kind of main menu system, you think, crikey, there's a lot there. And there is, of course there is, but it's just the same as going on to the apps on your phone. You think, well, there's quite a lot there. But you only use maybe one or two of them, and the rest of them are kind of settings that you'll set up, and then you'll just have how you want it, and then leave them be. You'll never touch them again. But that's where they all are, and it's nice and easy to use. So you've got the kind of rotary controller here, which is really nice and simple, you know, with just a nice feel to it as well. Then you've got these touch sensitive buttons around it which have a haptic feedback on them, which I really like. The only downside is they're embedded in this car in this piano black, which is just coated in fingerprints at this moment. The only way to get rid of this is to go for an optional package where this is then a sort of nice kind of matte finish wood. But then the iDrive controller and the seat controls turn into little kind of glass crystal things, which I don't think are particularly nice. So it's either a case of you've got to keep cleaning it, or you've got to option it up with that. There you go. You can also use gesture control. It will also use gesture control. So for turning volume up on the radio, you just do this or that, and that things. And there are some basic controls on the steering wheel. A very simple two-spoke affair where you've got music controls, and configuration for your dashboard, which I'll show in a second, and Bluetooth over here, and your cruise control side of things over there. Right, moving back onto this floating console, you've got your stop start button there, you've got your transmission lever here, button here, this rocker switch, where you go reverse, neutral, drive, or B mode, which is the brake regeneration, or then you have the P, the park, which is just a button here, and auto hold on hills. You've got different driving modes in the car as well, which we'll talk about in the performance and handling section, but you can just access them quickly by here, where it's personal, sport or efficient. Very straightforward. There's a volume rocker switch there for the stereo, so again, nice and simple to use. You don't have to go into the screen like that. And as I say, then these touch sensitive buttons around it just to go back to your main menu. Good storage. Press this button. There's a good depth of center armrest here with a kind of higher shelf that goes down there. You've got a little slot where you can pop your mobile phone in there and then feed the cables down, because there's two USB-C ports underneath this. There's also a standard wireless charging pad there, and two decent size cup holders for bottles, which will also go in the door. They've got a nice kind of angled little slot down in the door as well, but they can slip in as well, which is great. Door bins are a nice size, they're okay. I'd like to have seen them lined. They're not, they're just plastic at the bottom. Take note, BMW, it's nice to have them lined with something like Volvo do. That would have been a nice thing. You've got a storage glove box in there, but to be honest with you, it's for the manual, and that's pretty much it, or a pair of gloves. The vents are nice, because they're just, again, these little slots in the dash, and then the side ones at the side here. Maximum defrost and rear screen heat. The climate control system is all activated through the screen, but they're permanently on. So this is your climate control system here. So for upping the temperature is just on this one here, or if you go into the actual climate menu itself, it brings this up, which again at first seems like an awful lot, but once you get used to it, it's fine. You've got the heated seat with different levels, fan control, direction control here for that side, and then the same on this side for the driver. Heated seat with the addition, if you have the option of the heated steering wheel there. Now, whilst we're on steering wheel, that is the one black mark I have in this interior. BMW call this a polygonal steering wheel. Effectively, it's a hexagon, and it's horrible. I don't like it at all. Why, BMW, have you shaped it like this? Because the reason is simple as this. Whilst the rest of the driving position is excellent, I'm quite old-fashioned. I drive at a 10 to 2 position all the time. And at 10 to 2, your hands, your palms, your hams are on these corners. Why does a steering wheel have corners? It doesn't need it. BMW, stop it. Just give us the option at least of a round steering wheel, because what you end up doing is dropping your hands to here, which again, it's on an inward slope, so feels quite unnatural, and you end up driving it just with one hand here, another one over here, which, well, I don't really like, to be honest with you. So yeah, BMW, stop that. Give us a round wheel. In fairness, it's not as thick as the MSport steering wheels are sometimes, so it's got quite a nice girth to it. But yeah, come on BMW. This car doesn't need any more design controversy. Get away from that. give us a round wheel, please. Right, driver's binnacle. Let's move on to that. This is nice. I quite like it. Okay, it doesn't have dials. It's got this weird kind of BMW kind of graphs here. But you can configure what you see here. So depending obviously on what you want, whether you want your navigation up on the screen here, a more simple kind of arrow direction with compass. You can use the cameras, as I say, which are embedded there, where it will give you this assisted view if there's cars in front of you as such. And then more content, so for instance your miles and your range there, which is quite nice. So you really can configure it how you want, or if you just want a big speedo there, a very reduced kind of view, that's great. Or what you can then do is you can go across and you can have different layouts of the dials. So you can bring them in a bit closer, or you can have them slightly further apart, or more basic. You can then also have your head-up display in different configurations, and I can't show you that because obviously the camera won't pick it up, but this has got one of the best head-up displays that I think I've ever seen in a car. Tesla, take note, why can't you do something like this on your cars? Because this is phenomenal, this system. You can have it where it even flashes on the lane you're supposed to be in if you're on a multi-lane piece of road, and it's brilliant. It's simple, it's right in your view, it's clear, it's fantastic. I really like that. So please, Tesla, take note of BMW with that. Other than that, the only other thing to say is about the seats. The seats are lovely. As I said, I really like the material of these one, this kind of Alcantara kind of cloth blend. And as basic as they sort of look, they've got great support. They really hold you in a nice place. So there's enough lateral support down the sides, plus enough comfort. The squabs, although they don't adjust for length, they are long enough. And obviously, depending on options you want, you can have them with ventilation, massage functions as well, as if you spec up that particular thing. And you can even have them in the kind of vegan leather thing. So on the whole, this interior, I think, is without doubt the best in its class. The only black mark for me is this steering wheel. Other than that, absolute triumph. Now, the iX xDrive 40 has a 71 kilowatt hour battery, which is a drop on the 50s battery, which is about 105 kilowatt hours. WLTP range on this car is somewhere between 236 and 247 miles on the combined cycle. The reality, however, is slightly less than that. Now, I did a big drive in this car this week, and today is 15 degrees, and the car was charged up to just shy of 100%. And, well, it was showing just shy of 200 miles. Now, I've got a bit of an issue with that because, as we'll get onto with cost, these cars at this level of price, they're not going to be a second car. They're going to be the main family car. And for a car at this level to have a range of probably around about 200 miles isn't brilliant, especially when you think about people like Kia with the EV6 and Hyundai with the Ioniq 5. BMW's even their own iX3 is getting more for less than that. So it's not ideal. Anyway, charging speeds, 150 kilowatts it'll take. And if you were charging up on one of those chargers, then you can go from the benchmark 10 to 80% charge in 31 minutes. However, if you're more likely to stumble across a 50 kilowatt charger, like I did, having to charge on my long trip, it's going to take 73 minutes to do that same charging speed. From your 7 kilowatt wall box, then you're charging from empty to full in 10 3/4 hours. Now again, a little bit of a criticism here, because this is BMW's flagship. This is them saying this is the best that we can do, but there's no 800 volt architecture and charging speeds of 150 kilowatts. That's not brilliant, is it? Let's be honest, BMW, people can do better than that for less money. Now, if you want more range, of course, you can opt for the 50 model, which adds on effectively another 100 miles onto the range of this car. But that's another 20 grand, £20,000. Come on, BMW, don't take the piss. Now the 40, the xDrive 40. Now it's xDrive, so it's four-wheel drive. So there is a motor at the front, albeit a slightly smaller one than the one at the back. And combined, they give around 326 brake horsepower. Then that means a 0 to 60 time of 6.1 seconds. Now that's okay, I think that's fine. I mean, obviously if you went for the 50, it has much more power, and that drops the 0 to 60 time under 5 seconds. You know, these cars, they're 2.5 tons. There's no getting away from that, despite all the fancy construction and the carbon Kevlar and the use of lightweight materials and stuff. It's still a 2.5 ton car. So 0 to 60 time at 6.1 seconds, that's absolutely fine by me, and I don't think you need much more than that, if I'm being honest with you, because I don't really think that's what the car's about. You see, where the iX wins well for me is in its refinement and its comfort. This is a really comfortable car to drive. Now, I know I use the word comfortable a lot, but we've got to think about it in context. You've got to, when we do these car reviews, we are thinking about who is the target market for this car, who's going to be using this car, and it's going to be a family that's going to be driving around in this car. So you want it to be comfortable. The ability to throw it down a load of twisty back roads is neither here nor there if it makes your kids throw up in the back, let's be honest. So from that point of view, the iX really wins on its comfort and its refinement. Don't get me wrong, however, it's still a BMW, and its chassis department, it's not lacking in that. So you've got double wishbones up front and a 5-link multi-link rear axle at the back, so it acquits itself well when the going does get a bit twisty and turny. But you can't really disguise its weight. I would think an X5, you know, is a much more enjoyable car if you were thinking about an SUV as a performance car. And of course, there's still the M60 version of this car to come out, and I'm sure they'll tweak the chassis quite a bit to deal with more of that kind of performance orientated ride and handling. But until then, I have no qualms with this whatsoever. Even on these big 22-inch alloy wheels, the car rides really well. It has the ability to kind of flatten out the undulations and the ripples really well. And these frameless windows, I don't know how they've done it, because in a big car such as this, you would think having frameless windows, there's going to be a huge amount of wind roar coming, because this is a big aperture. Not at all. Not at all. It's really quiet in here. I think they've done a tremendous job with it. I really do. What else to say? Well, I've already spoken about the steering wheel, and that's the thing I really just don't like. It's uncomfortable for me to hold. Now, I get everyone's different. Everyone has a different driving position, so I will not hark on about it. But for me, I don't particularly like it. It is a glaring black mark in this car's interior, as far as I'm concerned. And that's that. So we'll leave that there. Brakes are good. Now the braking is done by, or the majority of the braking is done through regeneration. You'd never actually know that it's the motor's regeneration that's making the car brake. Now you can adjust the level of regen you get from it, depending obviously on where you go, but not via paddles. It's not quite as intuitive as the kind of, the paddle shift system you get on some cars, where you can ramp it up or bring it down depending on how you feel. You've kind of got to go into one of the menus. Let me explain it to you as best as I can. So the first way to get brake regen is through the transmission lever down here. If you go from D into B mode, that gives the regen. So if I flick this lever back now, it comes up and says it's in B, and if I lift off, it pulls us up, and it will bring you up to a halt. It's quite aggressive. If you're used to driving electric cars, you quickly adapt to it. If you're not, and this is the first one you drive, you might find it quite aggressive. But you can go into the menu system here, into the iDrive controller, and also adjust it and have it through a sort of like an adaptive setting, which is really clever, because what it then does is it uses GPS location to know where you are. So if you're coming up to, say, a roundabout, what it will then do is it will apply quite a lot of regen on it, or you're coming up to a junction like that, it'll apply the regen. If you're out on the motorway and you want it just to coast, it dials it back. Really clever, really, really clever. So you can have the adaptive regeneration, but you've got to go into the infotainment system to set that up. Otherwise, it's just this B mode down here, which is, again, as I say, perfectly adequate. Driving modes. Yes, it has got driving modes on it, and there are 3. You can set it up with a personal one, however you want to dial everything in. A sport. Let's go into sport, where the acceleration is pretty decent. You know, it feels a lot more aggressive. Everything starts to glow a little bit red. Yeah, I mean, as I say, you're not going to disguise the bulk of this thing. It acquits itself well, but it's not what the car's about, let's be honest with you. You also can go in from there, you can go into its efficiency mode. Again, if you're trying to kind of maximise your range, where it'll dial back on a lot of different things, so you've got the ability to do that as well. Or you just leave it all. Just leave it in the kind of normal kind of mode, and that's what I think I've been doing, well, pretty much all the time I've had the car. I've dabbled with it, but I'm not really that fussed about it. But to summarise in terms of performance, handling, and how the iX xDrive 40 feels over the 50, I think this is pretty much 90% of the 50. Yes, the 50 is more powerful. Yes, you can feel the difference in acceleration. Of course you can. It's a much more powerful car. But do you need it? And I'd argue no. I would argue no. I think this is perfectly acceptable in terms of where this car's positioned in the marketplace and the type of customer that's going to want this car. I think if you want a more performance orientated iX, then maybe waiting for that M60 version or whatever they're going to call it, or whatever it comes out as, maybe that's the one to have if that's the performance you're after. But the caveat of that, of course, is you can't get the 40 with the big battery, so you are compromising your range somewhat. You pays your money, he takes your choice. There you go. So the iX range kicks off with the xDrive 40 Sport at 69,905. If you want to move into the MSport, like this model we've got here, then you'll need 72,905 to get that. This car's got a few options on, so it's probably going to be a little bit more than that. As I said, if you then have to justify the extra mileage, then you're going to need the 50 model, which is 93,905 for the base Sport and even more for the M Sport. So it's not an insignificant amount of money for this car. Now, of course, natural rivals for this car are going to be Audi's e-tron, Mercedes-Benz's EQC, Jaguar's I-Pace, not to mention Tesla's Model X when it comes back on sale in the UK, hopefully sometime within 2022. But away from the SUVs that you would more commonly suggest, remember you've also got things such as Porsche's Taycan, Sport Turismo and Cross Turismo to consider, because they're at roughly around about this price where they start at, and they pretty much give, well, all the off-road ability that most people will probably need. Now, there's also the threat from the Far East, which is things like the Kia EV9. Now that's been shown in concept form and that's going to come out, and of course, as we've said before, these brands, Kia, Hyundai, they're no longer the kind of budget brands that people used to think of them as 20, 30 years ago. They're as good as BMW, Mercedes-Benz and Audi these days, so that's going to be a threat as well. But of course, one of the biggest threats is going to be from Land Rover. Now, the new Range Rover is coming in full electric form, and of course, it is a lot more expensive than even this car at well over probably £100,000. But remember, there's going to be the Range Rover Sport, and I wouldn't want to bet my house on them not bringing out an EV version of that car soon after it's launched. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the BMW iX xDrive 40 M Sport. We like its comfort, the interior design and use of materials, good performance and reasonable dynamics, and its spacious interior. We don't like the styling is still very divisive. The boot space is small, the range isn't as good as it should be for the price, and its electrical architecture isn't the big leap forward for a flagship EV. This is a summary of two halves. Well, first of all, we've got to find out whether or not we think the iX xDrive 40 M Sport is a better car than its rivals. Well, I think it has the best interior in its class. I love the refinement from it. Its performance is adequate. So from that point of view, I would probably buy one over the likes of an Audi e-tron or a Mercedes-Benz EQC. But its looks are still very, very divisive. And for me, at this price point, you still need a very much emotional attachment to your car. In other words, when you lock it and you walk away, do you look back to glance at it? And I think for this money, you should be doing that. And I'm not sure that iX makes you do that. So in terms of that, I would still buy either a Jaguar I-Pace or a Porsche Taycan Cross Turismo. But the second part of the answer to a bigger question is this the pick of the iX range, like we did with the i4? Well, with the i4, with the 40 and the M50 versions of those cars, it was a bit more clear cut because the range was between the two cars wasn't that much different. It was purely on the drive of the car that you judged it, and that's why we felt that the lower powered car was actually the better one of the two. But with the iX, the 40 is a significantly less range than the 50 has. But to get the 50, it's another £20,000. So I'm going to leave that up to you. If you are looking at an iX and that is the car for you, then in some respects the 40 does everything the 50 does. Its performance is good enough. You're not going to really feel a massive load of difference going into the 50, or dare I say, you probably don't need that much performance, and you'd be saving yourself £20,000 in the process. But if range is important to you, because as I say, this is going to be your main car, you know, you're going to be taking this on business trips, on family holidays, to skiing, or you know, whatever, to visit the family over Christmas or Easter. If range is important to you, then the 50 does offer a little bit more. But just remember, those extra miles, well, it's 200 quid a mile. Think about it like that. Thank you for watching another episode of AutoEV. As always, please, please, please remember to like the channel, subscribe as well, and make sure you press the little bell button down below so you're notified of when our next video goes live. And remember, we're on all other social media platforms as well, so Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, so hop across there and give us a like as well. And if you want to see even more videos from us, including van reviews, car reviews and our electric icon series, stick on our YouTube channel where there's a massive back catalogue just waiting there for you. Until next time, thank you ever so much for watching. I'll see you again soon. So, you've watched our video. It's now my job to tell you to like and subscribe and press the little bell button to receive notification of when our next video is uploaded.